Frank, thanks so much for joining us, sir. It's good talking to you again.
It's always a pleasure, Cam. How you doing?
I'm good. Now, this is the time of year when we start to get a lot of the end-of-year lists, and unfortunately a grim one released this week. The National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund releasing the number of officer fatalities this year, 173 total police deaths, and that is up, is it not?
It is. It is.
We saw yesterday the Attorney General, Eric Holder, make some remarks about this. One of the things that he said was that, quote, too many guns have fallen into the hands of those who are not legally permitted to possess them, in explaining the increase in officer fatalities. To me, I got to be honest with you, Frank, that kind of interjected a note of politics into the memorial, as well as, raising a lot of questions about Operation Fast and Furious, this government program that put thousands of guns in the hands of criminals. I'm curious if you thought that was perhaps the appropriate occasion for the Attorney General to make his remarks.
No, but he doesn't do much that I think is appropriate, to be honest with you. I think we've talked about this before. It really disturbs me when anybody tries to inject politics into something like the number of officers who have died in a given year. And last year, we saw an increase of 13%. We only had 153 dead died in the line of duty in 2010, 173 in 2011, and for especially with everything that's going on Fast and Furious, for Holder to use the increase in officer fatalities to try to push an agenda. I think it reflects poorly on him and the administration that he serves. But I have to say, sadly, it's not a surprise.
Why do you say that?
Well, and every day I go through news and I look at what's applicable and what's not to the communities that we serve. And although it hasn't been, he hasn't slapped anybody in the face with it. I think this presidential administration is obviously anti-gun, and I think with Fast and Furious, there's all the different ways of looking at it. But one of them is obviously that it's being leveraged in an attempt to try to put some new gun laws out there, or restrictions or regulations, or anything they can do to make it more difficult for the law-abiding citizen to get a firearm. And for Holder to use this in a political vein, I think it just is a little bit more icing on their anti-gun agenda cake.
Yeah, I largely agree with you. Like I said, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way to hear that note injected into the discussion because, again, these officers who did give their life in the line of duty, and we're talking about officers who were in some cases killed at traffic stops, vehicular homicides, killed with their own sidearm. You can go down the list and you can try to propose legislation based on every one of these officer deaths. But at some point, can't we have just some time where we actually talk about who these officers were and the lives that they led and the people that they left behind?
And that's part of what the memorial's there for, and they do fantastic work in recognizing the sacrifices that were made and the people who were wearing the badge and the uniform who made those sacrifices and the survivors they leave behind. The memorial does excellent work in that vein. We try to at officer.com. We have an honoring the fallen section where these 173 officers will certainly be remembered and everything that they've stood for. And realistically speaking, the number of officers killed by firearms was up in 2011 from 2010. But, you look at 68 officers killed by gunfire, 64 officers dying in traffic accidents, and, we're talking about a difference of 4 lives, and 4 lives are certainly, they need to be honored and respected and remembered. But, I view a vehicle and a firearm both as a tool. As a guy who's been in law enforcement 30 years, in 2012, I marked 30 years. They're both tools, and how we use them can be good or bad. The bad guys are going to use them both for bad. It disturbs me, again, that the administration, in the place of Eric Holder, has decided to leverage this for political value. I'd like to just remember, and the bad part is he'll probably be speaking during Police Week, and he'll mouth platitudes about how we need to remember them while he tries to leverage it for his own political gain, and it just bothers the heck out of me.
Well, and I think it should. We were discussing on the program last night, actually, this study. I remember you and I talked about this, I think, when it came out back in 2006. It was a study by some FBI behavioral scientists in the behavioral unit there, and they talked to officers who had been assaulted. They talked to the criminals who had assaulted the officers, and they tried to just gather as much data as they could. One of the things that they realized quickly not one of these criminals, and this is something that one of the researchers said, not one of these criminals said that any gun control law had stopped them in any way from acquiring illegally a gun. Whether you're talking a local law, state law, federal law, not one of these guys was thwarted. Now, we've been seeing, Frank, among the general population of this country, violent crime is dropping. If violence against police officers is on the increase, does that tell us anything? Are the criminals becoming bolder? Is there less fear of assaulting officers? I remember a couple of weeks ago, actually, in New Jersey, Bayonne, I think it was, there were a couple of police officers who were basically mobbed by like 50 people, and they were assaulted. Firearms weren't involved, but clearly there was no fear of attacking law enforcement.
Well, I think there's a mixture of things going on. We did have an increase in officer ambushes in 2011. I don't know if you remember, in January of 2011, in a 24-hour period, we lost 11 officers, and 4 of them were in Lakewood where they were ambushed. We had 5 officers ambushed, which is actually a surprising number in 2011. So we have a particular type of crime. But, I think law enforcement officers, when you see the kind of angst that our society currently has against government in general, and it's government at any level, the people seem to be a little bit perturbed at how much the government's forcing its way into their day-to-day life. And what's the face of the government? When you're out there day-to-day going about your business, a lot of people perceive that police officer as a government representative, and certainly they're all employed by a government at some level. And I think that people are taking their anger at the government out on law enforcement, very unfortunately. A lot of times police officers are going to show up to try to help somebody. They get called to do a job, and they die in the process. I mean, we had 9 police officers killed responding to domestic disturbance calls. And most of the time when you get a domestic disturbance call, it's one spouse abusing another spouse. Police officer gets there to intervene, and the next thing you know, he's dead. 9 out of 173. It's significant.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Frank, again, we want to make sure that folks can honor the 173 law enforcement officers who lost their lives. You said you've got a section on officer.com where folks can learn more about these officers?
Yes, we do. In our news feeds, we have a section called Honoring the Fallen, and all of the line of duty deaths are announced there, and anything that the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial shares, that's their dedicated section as well on officer.com. We encourage everybody to support the memorial, and if they've never been to Police Week, whether they're police officers or not, if they've never been to Police Week in D.C., and in 2012 it starts on Mother's Day, they going to the memorial, especially the candlelight vigil, is a truly moving experience. I can't watch it without shedding tears, and I've seen some truly hard men just break down in tears during the candlelight vigil. Officer.com live streams it on the web if you can't actually be there, but if you can be there, there's just nothing really reaches into you and turns your guts emotionally and shares with you the sacrifice these officers make and that their families survive, like being there during Police Week. So support the memorial. Go to Police Week if you can. If you can't, watch the vigil on officer.com. We'll live stream it. It doesn't cost anything, but remember those guys and girls who make that ultimate sacrifice going into 2012.
Absolutely right. Frank Borelli, editor of officer.com. Thanks again. Have a happy new year, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too, Cam. Stay safe.